Hey friends, Jill here. Welcome back to Whispering Willow Farm. It is a beautiful evening here on the farm and we are doing our first official fall garden tour at our new farm. It's actually our first official garden tour at our new farm and I'm real excited. I will tell you that the beds need some work. I need to do a lot of weeding, a lot of cultivating, so you guys have grace with me as we are navigating growing in a large space and moving and all the transitions. So the garden doesn't necessarily look as beautiful as it usually does, but it's producing so much food, and I think that's really the beauty in it, is that you can kind of neglect it a little bit and it's still gonna give back. So let's go inside and see what's going on. Actually, before we head into the garden, I have recruited a really cute helper to do this garden tour with me.
And it's not Abby. It's not Abby.
It's not June. It's Nathan. He has been helping me so much in the garden. You want to hop over here real quick?
Sure.
So at our last farm, pretty much the farm, as far as the gardens, we're kind of autopilot, right? Like we'd done all the major things. So it was pretty like we had down to a routine what needed to be done. And I primarily did those things. So unless we had trellises going up or trellises going down or a big project, you're kind of hands off from the garden for the most part and much more hands on with the animals, which he still is here. But I think here, because it was kind of such a larger space and we came in and we ripped out the summer garden, it was kind of all hands on deck. And so I feel like you have been much more invested in this gardening season than you have in several years past. Would you agree?
Yeah, we've got 10 times the space too.
We have 10 times the space. Mama can't do it on her own. But do you find that you like enjoy it more than you thought you did, or maybe you don't enjoy it as much as you hoped you would have?
Yeah, I mean, we were so looking forward to just moving in this space and, you know, getting it clean and just getting started, basically. Yeah. You know, we wanted to, obviously couldn't do everything all at once, but we tried to, you know. So I think that's just been the biggest part, is just getting everything cleaned up, you know.
Do you feel good about what we're about to show them?
Absolutely. We got tons of food growing.
We do. All right, now for real, let's go inside and see. So for those of you who may be new, garden tours are something that I have done primarily in the summer. Once a week, I'll hop on here, go through the garden, show you guys what's growing. I try to be descriptive as far as knowing the varieties, giving my opinion on if I like it, if I don't like it. I'd like to talk about the pests that we're dealing with or not dealing with, and just kind of give you guys an idea of, one, what's growing in my garden, but two, help you guys figure out what you want to grow in your garden. If I can grow it and I have a really bad time with it, or it tastes horrible, maybe it can save you those steps of growing it and you can just find a different variety. And so I am going to try and remember all the different varieties that were planted in here. Sometimes I get a little crazy and I plant stuff and I don't put the marker in there, I don't make a marker and I forget, so have a little grace with me on that. I'm hoping to be offering these once a week, every Friday for the duration of fall and winter. Since I will be growing year-round here, I would like to show you guys what's going on in the raised bed and then do a separate kind of additional quick tunnel garden tour as well, and show you guys kind of the comparison, because everything that we're growing in here as far as brassicas, so we have our cabbages, our cauliflower, broccolis, we are also growing those in the tunnel. And so I think that would be really cool for you guys to see how well it grows out here versus how much better it grows in a tunnel. And maybe if you're wondering, should I get a tunnel, should I not, that might help kind of answer some of those questions and just seeing a side by side. So on this trellis is a pole bean and they climb very, very nicely. This is a variety called Jade. The seeds came from Johnny's. It is the Jade variety. I really, really like these because they stay really small and tender like this. They just stay these really nice tender size. Over some of the other varieties I find that they get really big. This variety doesn't. So I will 100% be growing these again. It is the Jade variety from Johnny's. It fills out really nicely. We don't really have a ton of pests. That's also what's on this side as well. Over here we've got some volunteer Chinese noodle beans, which we do grow these every spring. This was a plant that was what Jessica had here from the summer, and it was a volunteer. I let it stay. We'll probably be able to get a good handful of these noodle beans. They're really good in stir fries. I've pickled them before. So behind me here we have our purple potted beans. Let me pick a few. These are really good if you can harvest them at the right stage. So this stage is really good. When you harvest beans at the right size, this to me is the right size. They're tender, they taste better, they have better flavor, versus if you let them kind of go and get a bit bigger, they just become more tougher. The beans inside of them are really big. I grow this variety every single year. It's really, really good. You just have to be careful to not let them get away from you. So I'm finding that on the purple potted beans and the dragon tongue beans, or the rattlesnake beans is what I think I have down here, you just have to be diligent to pick them often when they're younger. Down here we have more of those jade beans I was talking about. So we have quite a bit, we have quite a few, get a handful. It is surprising to me too, because these were all planted at the same time, and I noticed that these took longer to germinate and come up, and they've taken a bit longer to start producing versus the purple potted or some of the other varieties. But I would still encourage you to grow them, and it could be too that I'm trying to grow these in the fall and it just takes a bit longer versus growing them in the spring or the summer. Here we have our rattlesnake beans, which are starting to die out. If you can tell by the plant, these produced first and came up first, but now they're certainly just at their last stage. And so I'm going to be harvesting as much as I can off of this, and then we'll probably just clean this trellis off and not plant it again until next spring. So thankfully in Arkansas we have very, very long seasons. So we are at, coming up on the end of October, and I still have, frost tender things just thriving in the garden, which is one of the reasons I absolutely love living in Arkansas, is we are able to just really kind of play around with our seasons. And so I plant my beans and things like cucumbers. I can plant, early in the spring. I can plant another round of them in the summer, and then I can plant going into the fall, and I'll have them until the frost. And where I am, I'm in zone 7B, I have had beans even withstand a light frost. Because here, aside from last year was kind of crazy. It was, like I had mentioned in my last vlog, it was the coldest winter it had been in like 30 something years. Aside from that, we're usually not experiencing super, super harsh winter. So when it gets cold here, that's really not that cold. It's like upper 30s or something. And so we have had our beans do really, really well. And so I encourage you, play around with that. If you're, wondering, can I, do a late succession of maybe beans or cucumbers, you're really not going to know until you try it. Beans are super easy to grow. Cucumbers are super easy to grow. Usually you're not dealing with as many pests as you do in the springtime, in the summertime, in the fall. And so I would encourage you, just try it and see. Over here we have more beautiful volunteers. So these are zinnias that came from Jessica's summer garden, which I was happy to let these beautiful little things stay. I have not seen zinnias since we moved from our old farm. So this to me was really sweet, kind of reminded me of all the work I'd put into our old farm this last summer growing so many of these. I've been cutting a lot of these for bouquets. I do not know what variety it is, and it's probably a mix if I had to guess, but they're stunning. Thank you, Jess. It's so funny. Whenever we bought this farm, we received so many messages from people congratulating us and saying how happy they were for us. And then we had so many people saying, girl, you are going to have so many volunteers in your garden. And I was here for it. I couldn't wait. And it's been so much fun because I've been able to make so many arrangements out of just the volunteers. There's some coral fountain amaranth that's been volunteering over here in one of the beds, and it's stunning. And so it has actually been a really nice surprise because it is that reminder of what Jessica poured into this garden. And so we have been leaving a lot of the volunteers for the most part, and it's just been a really sweet surprise. All All right, so behind me, we have got our broccoli. You guys can see it's pretty big. I've got 6 plants tucked in here. This is the Green Magic broccoli. So I did buy my Brassicas because I didn't get them started in time. So I bought them from our local farmers co-op. And so they're pretty generic varieties. You can really kind of go in depth, and I have in years past grown different varieties, but I'm not gonna lie, the Green Magic is pretty true and true. It's a really good producer. I don't really deal with a lot of pests on it, and so moving forward, even if I could start my own, that's still probably the variety that I'd choose. They're just really hardy plants, and they just do really well. So we don't have any heads forming yet, but we're getting there, and they're healthy plants, so these look really good. I don't have my insect netting up yet, but they don't seem to be phased. Right here we've got some rainbow chard, which is really, really pretty. We have been harvesting quite a bit of chard. Here we have some red mustards that are just getting eaten up. Grasshoppers are primarily what we are dealing with, and you guys can see they prefer this one. Usually when I see a plant out in the garden that is getting more damage than the other plants, naturally you think, oh, let me just rip it up, right? Like this one's getting attacked. If you've done a lot of things to treat it, and like this one, I mean, it's like severely attacked. I actually don't. I'll try to treat it, and then if that's still not working, I leave it because it's a really good trap plant. And so I talk about this a lot. You can plant flowers, you can plant different herbs, you can plant different vegetables, in with your production crop, essentially to attract all of the things to it so it leaves your other plants alone. And so when I noticed that this one was getting eaten up really bad, I put some BT on it, I put some dipel dust. Nothing was working. I don't really have a cure for grasshoppers other than getting the netting on here, and just I haven't had the time to do it. And so I thought, you know what, I'm gonna leave this one because the pests love it, the grasshoppers love it, and it's worked really well because now they are just feeding on this plant and leaving the rest of them alone. And I will actually put this in my notes. Hey, you know, red mustards really attracted the grasshoppers, and I may intentionally plant this next year just, you know, in between my brassicas, just so they will leave it alone if I'm not able to put up some sort of netting on here, or just depending on what I'm planting. So I do encourage you guys, plant trap plants. They really do serve a purpose. They're really beneficial in a lot of different ways. And really it's just inexpensive. If I could do this one, you know, plant, and I think about the cost of this one plant, especially if I were to have started it from a seed, that's very, very cheap, versus having to spray it every single week or put some sort of dust on it. Even just the management alone is a lot easier. So if you haven't ever looked into trap plants, look into it because it really is a good idea. Here we have our dino kale that is doing beautifully. Look at that. Looks so good. Here we have some red leaf lettuce, which is doing really, really good. It's growing a bit slower than I thought it would, but overall the plant looks really healthy. Down here we have our cauliflowers, which are doing well, taking a bit longer to get established than the broccoli. These aren't growing as fast. I'm having some issues with the starts just not looking the greatest, but I mean, they're growing just slow. This is just your typical white cauliflower, nothing fancy here. So back here on this back half of the bed, we have got the hybrid cabbage. They're doing really, really well for the most part. Most of my cabbages look really good. I do have a couple plants that have some grasshopper damage, but overall they're doing really great. One thing I will note too, so I'm pretty sure cabbages, they say space like 24 inches apart or something like that. That's a lot of space in between planting. I don't do that. I squeeze in quite a bit. I mean, there's a lot of liberty there. When you think about too, having them spaced 24 inches apart. So I've got more space this way, but if you can look, I've got 3 in a row here. So I have got a red cabbage in between because typically those don't get as big. But the way I see it too is I'm not wanting to harvest a head of cabbage that's that big. More than likely I'm going to harvest them when they're a bit smaller, tender. They just tend to taste better. So when you think about the size head of cabbage you want to harvest, I don't need 24 inches in between them to be able to accomplish that. And I think too, I really don't know why. They say this large amount of space needs to go in between these plants, and I have found that there's a lot more liberty in squeezing them together, especially if you are working with a tight space. Say maybe you only have a few raised beds. You can really play around with that and plant them much tighter, not just with brassicas, but with a whole lot of things. You know, your tomatoes, you can plant your tomatoes 12 inches apart if you heavily prune them, and then you're able to get even more in a small space. And so that is just something I would encourage you to be mindful of. Don't use the seed packet as a reference, not a have to. That's kind of giving you an idea, but there is liberty, so play around with that. All right, what you doing?
I'm tired of looking at nut grass.
Oh my gosh, we got tools for that.
Tools don't get down to the nut.
So this is what he's doing while I'm doing a garden tour, is weeding my beds like the good husband
It's
that
the
you
only
are.
way to get rid of nut grass.
That's true. What's your favorite brassica that I'm growing?
Broccoli for sure. Broccoli's, I don't know, Brussels sprout.
Oh, I'm not growing any Brussels out here. They're all in the tunnel.
Do you have any broccoli out here?
Oh yeah.
Broccoli's probably my number 3 favorite veggie.
And what is your favorite way to prepare broccoli?
Of course, in a cast iron skillet.
Of course.
I cook everything in a cast iron skillet. It's the only way to cook, besides a grill.
And what else do you do to it when you put it in the cast iron skillet?
Well, it just depends on what mood I'm in. If mommy will let me use bacon grease, I'll use bacon grease. If not, I'm loving that garlic infused squeezito.
Oh, olive oil.
Olive oil.
Yeah.
But I'll normally saute my onions for a good 10 minutes and then throw the broccoli in there and just char it.
So good.
It's my favorite.
You've really never had broccoli until you've had Nathan's broccoli. I'm not just saying that because I'm his wife. He makes some really good, some really good food. Back behind me here, this is all daikon radishes. These things are getting huge. They get massive. I'm going to keep letting them get massive, and we're going to ferment them all. And Nathan's going to be a really happy man, huh?
I'm going to be so happy.
I mean, you guys can see though, some of them are already really big. These have been super hands-off, which is great. Another reason to grow radish. You just throw them in the ground, water them, and leave them be. Over here we got some more dino kale. We have some more of this red leaf lettuce. We've got some ragged jack kale. This was a mix. This was some sort of like just salad mix. I'm not sure what it is. That's literally just what it said was salad mix. There's some more chard. Some more kale. Lettuce mixes. So I have my bean trellis right here, and kind of the plan that I had in my head that I was going for was, you know, that trellis is taking up a bit of space in the bed, and so there's not a whole lot of space on this side. And so what I wanted to do in that area was plant things like my rainbow chards, my dino kales, my lettuce mixes. And so that is what I've done. As you guys can see, it works out nicely. You can plant those things pretty tight, and also a lot of them just grow up, like the kale and things like that. So I have more Green Magic broccoli planted back here. I just kind of filled in spaces is what I ended up doing. I bought the same 3 varieties. So we had that hybrid cabbage, we had the Green Magic broccoli, and I don't remember the cauliflower. And so I just bought a bunch of that, and then we've just kind of filled in. But you can see, I mean, the garden is really full. I'm feeling really good about it, honestly. Look at that. Look at that cute guy over there working. So that is what is going on in the garden as far as vegetable production. Now, we do have this bed right there. You guys can see that has brassicas planted in it. but I don't have anything in the other bed. And so what we were trying to do was just, we planted everything in the tunnel first. What we had left over, we came and planted out here. So pretty much the garden right now is kind of divided in half. So we have our big pergola that's out here, and to the left of the pergola, which is what I just showed you guys, is all of our vegetable production. And then to the right of the pergola is all of our overwintered flowers, which I am going to show you guys. Those are the beds that need lots of weeding. That's on my to-do list tomorrow. I'm actually really excited to show you guys the flowers, but also just to be able to talk more and teach more about flowers. It is something that I have recently fell in love with, and I didn't realize just how much joy the flowers brought me. And I also didn't realize too how beneficial they are and how they kind of marry really well with the vegetable garden. So I am really excited to be able to show you guys flowers now, but definitely more flowers throughout the winter, in the spring, in the summer. I'm thinking as of now, we're gonna kind of continue the same layout. Even after these flowers bloom and we cut them in the spring, we will replant our summer with flowers here too. So kind of the right side of the garden is gonna be dedicated to flowers, and the left side food production. And then we'll probably do half and half in the tunnel like we do right now, which is working out really well for us. So I do just want to pause for a moment and tell you, if you have been on the fence about growing flowers, grow the flowers. It has brought me so much joy, and I can guarantee you it will bring you so much joy too. And what I have been so pleasantly surprised with, coming from only growing vegetables, I thought either you have to grow vegetables or you have to grow flowers. I didn't really think you could do both at a large scale. And so I am finding that you can, and that they marry together really well, and they're actually really beneficial. And it is aesthetically pleasing in your garden to see all these flowers blooming and these vegetables growing. It really is just such a lovely sight, and both of them play a really significant role in the garden for different reasons. And so I really encourage you guys, if you've been on the fence about it, now is the time to start digging deeper, figuring out what you want to plant for your spring and summer cutting garden. And so grow the flowers. All right, down here we have sweet peas, which will trellis up. They have grown quite a bit, actually. Don't worry, the kids know not to mess with these. Here we have all of these basils, which we will keep. There are 3 different basil varieties in here. So we have the Genovese basil, which is just this really pretty, vibrant green. Over here we have the Tulsi, T-U-L-S-I basil. We have left all of these. We've been using them as fillers for bouquets. We will leave them, and as you can see, these are really established. So what they're going to do is just keep dropping seed pods and self-seed. And so that's kind of what we're just going to dedicate this to, is that this is just the basil bed. So we do have these small beds that line the back part of the garden. Those beds are going to be our herb beds. So we have not cleaned them out yet. They need to be cleaned out. I haven't done that yet. There are some herbs already established in there. There's a lot of rosemary and oregano, but there are some rose bushes and some lilies. We're going to be transferring those to the cottage garden. And just have these little designated herbs, because a lot of times if you're planting herbs in your bed, I really recommend planting them at the end of your bed, because sometimes they can become really invasive, especially like mint. If you hear someone talk about, oh, don't ever grow mint in your garden, that's why, because it just takes over everything. And so those nice little 4x4 beds will be perfect for herbs, and that's kind of our plan for those in the spring and the summer. In this bed we have foxglove. We have different varieties. I think we have a purple, a white, a mix. I'm not exactly sure, but this entire bed is filled with it. We just have the different varieties kind of blocked off. They're doing really well. Actually, these were so small when we transplanted them, but they're doing great. Especially some of these are bigger. So that's really encouraging. So these will overwinter and bloom in the early spring. And then this whole bed has insect netting on it, but you can see we have some Chinese forget-me-nots, little bitty guys. Some of these are a bit bigger. And then here we have our bachelor buttons. So we have a bunch of these, and they actually go down pretty far. Again, we have all the beds kind of sectioned off. It's kind of funny because you have the vegetable side of the garden, everything's getting big and it's like just going crazy. We planted it way before we planted all of, you know, the flowers. Then you have the flowers who are just now getting established and they'll just start sending down roots, but they won't actually do anything until the spring, which is really bizarre to me because I'm not used to planting things that are just going to be over like dormant in the winter and then pop up in the springtime. And so this has been fun. I've been able to learn so much through this process. I'm just excited. I don't want to become a flower farm. I want to become a farm that has diversity on it that we can use to teach people no matter what they're doing. If you're growing vegetables, if you're growing flowers, if you're raising animals, I want this farm to just really be a platform for us to teach and encourage people. And I've honed in on vegetables for so long, and I've really like just expanded my knowledge as best as I know how. Of course, I'm still learning. But then flowers are something that I have been able to, one, learn so much about, and really now I'm stepping into that season of that hands-on learning and being able to teach. And so I'm excited to just kind of build this farm as a platform, just to teach people who are interested in so many different things. And that really gets me fired up. It really gets me excited. And so I hope you guys are ready to learn more about flowers, because that is obviously what has been on my brain lately, been a lot of my content, and I can't wait to share with you guys. All right, friends, this wraps up our first official fall garden tour of our new house, our new farm. Pretty excited about it. I think the biggest takeaway is I can grow food no matter where I live. I had such a great foundation, right? Though, I mean, I had a really good start. It really does make a difference walking into a place that is already set up for you to just thrive. And so that's really what we walked into on this farm. We had all the beds in place. We had all of our structures in place. We had the, you know, tunnel already put up. That was huge. So I was able to just come in here and really start getting my hands dirty and doing what I know how to do, which is growing food. And so it has been amazing. I can tell you that it has done my heart some good, though, to come out of my house every single morning and see a garden that is so full, that is thriving, that has the love I've poured into it, the love Nathan's poured into it, the love Jessica's poured into it with all these volunteers popping up. It is just such a representation, I feel like, of the joy that is in my heart right now. Like, this garden is my heart just thrown out right now, and I love it so much. It's a joy and a privilege to get to share it with you guys. I love what I do so much. I can't even tell you guys how much I love what I get to do. And I feel like I'm on the brink of just really stepping into what I'm called to. You know what I mean? Those of you who know, you know, right? And so it's just been so much fun. I thank every single one of you guys who have joined this journey with us. We certainly could not and would not want to do this without you guys. So I hope y'all enjoyed the first of many garden tours, and I'll talk to you guys soon.